Welcome back to the Long Way Back podcast. I'm Timmy Long, your host tonight with always Georgie Cooney. Today we have Alva and Anna. I got the names right, lads.
Yep.
So and in the right order as well.
Yeah.
So Alva, you work in Mallow Community School.
Yeah, I'm a learning support teacher there. Yeah.
Okay, and Anna?
I'm at UCC, University College Cork, at the Language Centre.
Thank you very much. Thank you both for coming here tonight and having a chat with me and Georgie.
Yeah, brilliant.
You know, we're just going to talk a little bit about maybe neurodiversity, what's going on in schools, what you're noticing is helping kids, and we'll talk a little bit about the emotional regulation stuff as well with you. So, Georgie, do you want to kick it off?
Yeah, no, I'm delighted that Anna and Alva are here.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons that I know them is because they're both tutors at the Dyslexia Association of Ireland workshop in Blarney. And so I know that we have an interview with the second level, but we actually, our main kind of age group is really from second class to sixth class.
Okay.
And so it's really important that we hear a little bit more about the younger kids and the approach that we use and the importance of using multisensory teaching in not just workshops, but in the classroom as well. So I'd love to hear a bit of information basically about their experience in the classrooms, but also outside the classroom, because I know Anna has a focus on sort of counselling and therapy as well. So it's really interesting stuff.
Yeah. And important as well.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure there's a lot of parents out there will need a lot of information around some of the stuff we're going to talk about tonight.
Yeah.
So we'll ask as many questions as we can that may be important. We'll put ourselves in the position of a parent at home and what we'd like to hear.
Yeah.
And that's how we'll go. And, you know, you just answer whatever questions you can as honestly as you can, you know, and we'll just take it from there.
So I think one of the things that I really notice is that the younger learners are tend to be, not always, tend to be more active. Quite a lot of fidgets. And so whenever I'm walking past these two in their classrooms, there's a lot of activities going on. So I guess I'd love to know what approaches you guys use for trying to get them ready to access learning. Because it's not just about obviously sitting down and listen to what we're going to say. It's about being able to get them ready to just listen, chat, feel comfortable, feel regulated. How do I do that? So I don't know, Alva, do you want to just say what kind of stuff have you done?
I suppose I would consider my teaching very kind of relationships based, and it's the same in the workshop. So those first few sessions, just really getting to know them. And then I suppose once you have that good relationship, it's a lot easier to say, okay, we can have a break for a few minutes. We can maybe do a game involving some of those kind of reading skills. But now it's maybe time to settle for 10 minutes and do work. And then we might have a break again. I think they develop trust with you that way.
It's interesting you say that because actually Alva came in and sort of rescued us about halfway through the term.
Yeah.
And was working with a group who'd had sort of lots of different teachers coming in. And there was a parents' meeting about a week after she'd arrived. And the parent actually came up to me and said, I can't believe how well she knows my child after like 1 or 2 sessions. And that just shows, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think it's the most important thing, really. And I'd say you'd agree. Yeah.
Absolutely. Talking about relationship, of course, emotions, right, come next. So for me, I'd say 2 ways. One is the therapeutic side of that. So I do certain strategies or methodologies, tools, and even the language. So as a therapist, I can see a lot more when I have a child, and every child is different, right? Before we expect to see some results, visible results. So from thinking, then to emotions, and then to action and the changing in their behavior. So I focus on, well, it's a feel-good lesson. Yes, so number 1, to make them feel good, safe, secure. Everybody.
Very important.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Every single person.
And how do you do that?
Well, I suppose with some meta language. So I try to tap into their world. And with some questions, I notice what they answer, what they say, what they do not say as well. Sometimes I call them silent sufferers because you never know what has happened in their life, and they come. It's a workshop, so again, they may observe, they may listen to that. So body language as well, verbal and non-verbal communication. Well, what I can do is to rephrase or reframe at the same time their thoughts, and then they feel well understood as well. And sometimes they come to me and say like, wow, what you said there, or you explained that, it's just fantastic.
Would you be able to relate to that,
Transforming.
Alma?
100%. Yeah, definitely.
Honestly,
I mean, that rephrasing that you talk about, I know one of my first sessions in the workshop, we were doing an activity and they could volunteer to read if they would like to. And I had one of the girls volunteer to read, and then halfway through, she was finding it difficult. She goes, I can't do this, I have dyslexia. And the whole group rephrased it for me. They said, we all have dyslexia. You know, it was actually a great way to kind of tap into that, because that was her mentality in school. And I think just seeing that confidence that way.
Even that probably made the group even more safer.
Definitely, yeah.
You know, and because they all called out what was going on for
Exactly.
them. And it's, oh, yeah, I am too. And then they could relate. You know, that sounds amazing.
It was really nice, yeah. And I suppose the workshops are very special that way, that we kind of create that atmosphere. So I'd like to bring that more into kind of schools as well, just have that open conversation, because we do all learn in different ways, and you know.
It's all about relationships, isn't it, Georgie?
Yeah,
relationship with your partner, your husband, your wife, your brother, your sister, and the same relationships are brought into the classrooms. Like if you can treat somebody, it doesn't matter what age they are. If you can treat somebody with respect and give them a little bit of time, that goes miles. It really, because this child mightn't be getting that kind of respect and attention at home. They might be getting the attention, but it mightn't be the right attention. So if you're giving them that little bit of care and respect, because you understand maybe how it's working for them in their own environment at home, it goes so far. Because when I think of that, I look back to my own school days and I see some of the fantastic teachers that were there. And it was like their input. But I didn't see it like that back then. You know, I didn't. What I seen was just teachers doing their job. But I didn't see, it's only now when I see the amount of effort that these teachers did really give us. I'm so blessed. You know, and it sounds like you're doing the same thing here and what these teachers done for me.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think that it would be great to encourage other teachers as well, you know, because it's so, like, all teachers want to help, they want to educate, they want to reach every child in the classroom. Like, I don't know a teacher who doesn't want that.
100%.
But it's so sometimes, and I've definitely experienced this many times, particularly when I was first learning to be a teacher, was I just didn't know how to get in there, and it's quite devastating, you know, when you just know, you can see you're not helping them the way you should.
Takes time though in some cases, doesn't it?
Absolutely, but it also takes knowledge. And I think, you know, what you need is people or leadership that's willing to help encourage you to go on courses, encourage you to keep learning. You know, well, if you don't know what dyslexia is, go and learn about it, or we'll pay for you to go on a course. Like, we've got lots of children here who need, you know, we need a professional. Or in one situation when I was working in London, I was trained and then I was asked to train the other teachers, you know. So if they couldn't afford it, they could afford to train one person and they had to be willing to go and train others. And, you know, there are ways around it, but it has to come from the top, that drive to try and meet all the kids' needs. And Alva, you were saying that you'd spoken to some of the teachers in school about their experiences of training.
Yes, in preparation for the podcast, I was asking around because I'm very aware that I only come at this with my own perspective, and I just was wondering,
same here,
what the general consensus was. So I chatted to just a few of the teachers, or a few teachers I know as well, and there was a huge disparity between how well prepared they felt or how well trained they felt they were. And there seems to be a big difference between the teacher training, how much CPD, continuous professional development, one teacher might have done compared to another, their own personal experiences, if they have their own children might have dyslexia, or they might have taught a lot of children with dyslexia, or they might not have. and just their years experience teaching. It's very different teacher to teacher. But what they all had in common was I asked them if they had someone in the morning with dyslexia, what would they want to know or what would they want to do? And every single one of them said they'd read up more and train up more. So that is in common.
That's
there,
really
yeah.
interesting.
Yeah, that's a great point as well. So I think that's fascinating as well, that like when you look at teachers, we look at them and we think that they all know the same stuff.
Yeah.
But some teachers go on further for their own professional development, and some teachers as well have kids, and what that brings is more compassion, more empathy for children, you know. And it's not a case that some teachers are different. It's just some teachers might have that more knowledge. And fascinating.
Yeah.
What did you go on to study? Because you trained, and then you were saying that you
it depends. I suppose in a school, I've always been working in developing schools, so newer schools, and because of that, the younger you are, you still might get positions of responsibility, or you might be asked to do certain jobs. So I know in one school they asked me to maybe set up a quite coherent step-by-step guide for the learning support teachers to help support children with learning how to read that might be struggling. And for me, that just involved delving really deep into what already exists out there. So there are guidelines for teachers out there, really large documents, and there's lots of resources. And I know we might be told about them in college, it might be mentioned in a lecture, but there is that difference between what one person might know about, like what programs they might have used, and another person. So I compiled that for the teachers in the school and was able to tell them about it. So that was great. But I know in the school I'm in, I know someone mentioned to me UFly, which is something I have never used, which is
never even heard of it.
Yeah. So they were telling me about another program that I then looked into. So I think you're always learning about these new programs.
It's about spending the time doing the research.
Yeah.
That's a lot of time.
It's
a lot
time.
Of it is
Yes,
time.
yeah. And energy. And as well, that's one area. There's so many areas that teachers want to train up in. So, you know, it is, I suppose, it's mad really, the difference. And
Totally. And talking of training, I know, Anna, you have a real desire to go out and train the world.
Absolutely.
And your focus is such a positive focus. In fact, I'd love you just to tell us actually very quickly about this competition you ran in the workshop where these kids came flying out of the door. We're running around with like Easter bunnies, I don't know, plastic, like there were so many things. I was like, what? Because they had won various things in this competition, and even if they hadn't won, they were given little things.
Absolutely.
Anna, do tell us, what was this competition?
So the theme was the power of positivity, and of course it's a broad topic. Great.
Yes.
And there were poems, there were like stories, drawings.
Dances.
Oh my goodness, as well. Yes.
Recorded dances.
Really?
Fantastic. So number one is about skills and personalizing this and giving some opportunities for growth and development and discovering, empowering, I would say, yes, at the same time, learners. And the other part was to give out the message as well, a positive one. Because sometimes we wait for some big things, but what I want to say, and this is the message to spread all over the world, is be kind, be nice to people, enjoy every little moment. Even a conversation can change your life or somebody else's life. So it's so important. What have you got to say there? Okay. And we had the winner with fantastic
And
message about all the, yes?
What was the winner, just out of interest? What was
the winner? Maisie prepared, well, that was quite deep with the change of mindset. She presented how she felt when she was diagnosed and later on her journey up till now. So
was it a story,
self-esteem. It was a video. And again, yes, although, just in short, although I was diagnosed and I thought it would be something terrible for me, now I know that I am creative, I have other skills, I can play, I can do all sorts of things, and she was in different places as well, and so so that's a lot of effort put into that.
That's the exact message that needs to be out there for all the kids who are struggling with the same things.
Yes.
Like that child is an ideal kind of role model for children who are struggling with learning differences and other issues. you know, it's this child will say, you know, it's okay. Like, it's okay. It's actually a good thing in some ways, because you start understanding yourself a little bit more. It's when it's the issue is when a child isn't diagnosed and their behavior then within the classroom is classified as bold, or they're just disruptive, and that's the issue, you know. And sometimes the reason that child may not have got a diagnosis because of poverty within the family,
Indeed.
or the school can't afford the funding for it. You know, do you see that happen very often?
Yeah, I think as well, I know that might have been touched on, but it does, like, I'm not a doctor or an educational psychologist, you know. As a teacher, you're looking at a child, they're checking boxes for certain things, but they also check boxes for other things. I know I had a child before that all the teachers that I'd talked to anyways were convinced of definitely ADHD or anxiety, and none of us had considered dyslexia. This was before I did the training for the workshops now. But the educational psychologist report came back and the child had dyslexia. And it just made perfect sense. But even experienced teachers are going to be missing these things, you know. There needs to be more accessible assessments available through schools, and the waiting list as well. I know. It's very difficult for parents. I know you're talking to them at the workshops, but yeah, it's.
And what are,
difficult.
Georgie, what are the things what are the biggest things for teachers to look out for when they have a child in class and the child may be dyslexic? What are the pinpoints?
It's a really good question. Yeah. I think a lot of it depends on the age.
Okay.
So with our really young ones, your working memory is still developing. So, 6, 7 years old, they're still having to strengthen their working memory. So of course, if there's a slightly weaker working memory, it's going to be hard to remember rhyming. It's going to be hard to remember some of the phonic sounds. And then, so what we're looking for is actually sort of usually phonological awareness.
What's fun?
Yeah.
What is that?
Good question.
Because I can't even pronounce
I know,
it.
I can ramble on and talk about phonological awareness without even explaining it. So phonological awareness is basically our awareness of language. So if we don't have a good awareness of language, how do we have a good awareness of literacy? It's formed based on rhyming, so recognizing patterns in rhyme, in syllables, so beats in words, and the sounds, so phonemes. So phonemes is a good way of explaining it. So phoneme is an individual sound. So the f starts fish, is also at the end of chief. So it's appreciating that f could be at the beginning of a word, could also be at the end of the word. And without that understanding, it's very hard to learn the representation for f, because it suddenly comes from nowhere. This random letter that we're suddenly having to learn in phonics. Why? Because it starts words, it ends words, it's in words. And all of that doesn't involve reading or spelling. It's game playing, it's language, it's speaking and listening. It's chatting about stories. What word did you hear that rhymed with that word? So phonological, and actually Alva I know knows a lot about phonological words, and Anna. Because in the interview, Alva was on it, and I was like, yes. And phonological awareness, it sadly isn't really emphasized, I don't think, in the curriculum. Now, I may be wrong.
There are more movements towards it.
Great.
So there's more evidence-based learning that supports that we must develop that first, and
Brilliant.
schools are prioritizing assessing that as well.
Good.
At younger ages. But again, you might have children who might have missed that a couple of years ago that now really could have done with that. It's also great that it is oral, because I'm sure someone could tell me loads of rhyming words, but they still might struggle to read. But it's that first kind of stepping stone, it's very important.
Because if you can hear the ill in pill and spill and chill and thrill, you're more likely to recognize the ill in the story, in the book, and then you're more likely to remember how to spell it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So it's all those patterns, and it's that bridge that links language to phonics, reading, spelling.
It's actually quite complex. It's I'm sitting here now and I'm really trying to keep up.
Yeah.
And yet
trying
it's
to
taught through games.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, games and rhyming.
And how old are kids usually when they're going? You're looking at maybe them being dyslexic by using this methodology.
Well, this is something. I mean, I could test an adult on their phonological awareness if they're dyslexic, and they may not appreciate rhyming or syllables or phonemes. They may never have been taught it, yet they've gone through an entire education system having to struggle through reading and spelling. But if you're asking me, what are we looking for in an early learner? It's usually this lack of awareness of phonological awareness. And then really finding it hard to store phonics.
Okay.
So these letter sounds and being able to recall, what was that? What's the vowel in that? Or they might say, instead of cat, they might say cut. Or
what about a child that doesn't even want to go near vowels because of the difficulties? Like that would, like, I'm an adult and I don't even want to go near vowels because I get anxious with the thoughts of trying to understand what a vowel is in a word or a noun. You know, it's just like I'm quite comfortable with what I know now, without wanting to go back and try to understand all that stuff around nouns and vowels. It just would absolutely drive me completely insane.
If you were taught in a way that suited your brain, you wouldn't be so scared of it.
Yeah.
And that is the point of what we're doing in the workshops, is finding a way in. It doesn't need to be scary. You can sing a vowel song. You can dance it out. You can make the movements. You could shape vowels in body shapes on the floor, on the desk, standing up, sitting down, upside down. Whatever is going to help you to remember, you know, is it's finding that way in. I mean, would you agree? Like,
Absolutely. Brain-friendly techniques that works, and multisensory teaching. So, as you mentioned, each brain is different, so we need to discover what way works best. And, well, when you said, I don't want to go, these are cognitive distortions, biases right away, the mindset. So how about, number one is, let's choose the way that works for you. Different things will show you, and it's fun. And of course, we associate things and we work on patterns. So what if we associate that with something great, cool, pleasant? So multisensory, if not that way, let's try another way. I want to mention music and movement as well to it. So it's never boring. And of course, we love
and it's fun
that
as well
entertainment
at the same
and
time.
fun.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it's taking it out of it. What you're doing really is taking the learning away from the norm, the normal learning path.
Yes.
Absolutely. And what we do in the workshops is not normal.
And that's
it's not mainstream.
And these workshops are for people in primary school.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. So we tend to start with second class, and even then some of them can be very young, because remember, with that working memory has only just really developed. Some of them are really struggling with phonics. I mean, interesting. There's someone I'm thinking of who's in your group who was devastated when she was told she had dyslexia, because however it was described to her or whatever she'd heard about it was a life-changing. This is awful. This is horrendous. And her mother was saying to me, how do I make this more positive? And so there was a big discussion in her group. And her mother then said, oh my goodness, she came back and she just realized she wasn't the only one. Everyone else was, but they talked openly about it. And then today I read a card from her, and she just said, I have learned so much. I love learning so much. In contrast to 2 years ago, when she thought her world has ended. It's such a...
And this is what we need more of. So we need more of these groups where children feel like they fit in, instead of not fitting in the norm. In the normal
and
classroom.
Open discussion about it. I mean, there's Dyslexia Awareness Month. There's so many months for different things in school, and I do appreciate
it's such a neurodiversity week this week.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
But just that it's openly talked about, and that it's normalized. That's the word. Yeah. Definitely. Yeah.
Keep the conversation going, and this is if we could see every single school normalizing neurodiversity, normalizing learning differences, these kids wouldn't feel so isolated. If we had assemblies all the time about, we're all different. and and promoting different ways of learning. And sure, some of you, like Jolly Phonics, for example, reminds me of It's Great Multisensory. There's a song, there's actions. A lot of kids loved it, but there are some kids who hated it, and they needed something like Letterland, where they learnt a letter because of a picture. The letter was in the picture. It's got to suit them. It's got to, that's what we mean by multisensory, is let's try different things.
A combination. What benefits a child with dyslexia in the classroom will also benefit the other children who are struggling to read. It's going to benefit your more able learners. That multisensory approach will benefit all the children. It's really important, and I think that is down to staffing and resources for school. I know there's more of an emphasis now on having learning support teachers helping in the class, as opposed to that withdrawal and taking groups out so much. And that's to help kind of resource that. And
what do you think of that?
I think, to be honest, with the younger ages, that makes perfect sense, because you're catching, as a learning support teacher going into the classroom, you can see things. You're another adult, you're another perspective, and it's an extra pair of eyes for observation. You're bringing in resources, it helps the teacher. And I know from having taught a whole class as a mainstream class teacher as well, that maybe half hour where you have a teacher in for stations is so helpful, because children are getting that closer attention. There's a group with that adult, and they're bringing another perspective. They have another way of teaching. They might have been trained differently to you. And that multitude of kind of approaches and resources is brilliant. I'm sure I see you using great resources the whole time. And it's great to see we can learn from each other,
Yeah.
What sort of resources do you use, Anna? Because I'm always seeing like multicolored balls flying in the air.
That's true. And when you said the word perspective and the approach, again, can I mention one interesting, I think, point about so far when we have a child, and so far a lot has happened, and I'm an NLP practitioner as well, so the neurolinguistic programming, they have a certain program there.
Can you explain neurolinguistic programming?
Yeah, right. So we have a system of behavior, kind of reaction patterns, and we operate on that, neuro and linguistic. So the neurons react to some things, but everything has happened up to this moment. So if a child comes to the class, now somehow is going to react to something that has happened, but it's going to be new. So we're changing that program with the language. I can tap into their model, or they have some strategies, coping mechanisms, that they have built so far. And what I want to do is just check if I can help differently, neurolinguistic, with the language to the brain.
I was about to say neuro-brain linguistic language. Exactly. Okay.
Yeah, I'm also a neurolanguage coach. So again, this is coaching, trying to help. Like, there's the relationship and a different perspective. I have one, and trying to empower them that you may see that visible change in behavior later on once you start changing your self-talk, right? Number one. Timmy, you mentioned understanding. Okay, but do you believe in yourself? Do you understand how you work, how you think, what your expectations are, and so on? So this is really, quite interesting, I think, for a child. The subconscious mind is involved too. It's not just processing, learning, thinking, adding, right, and assessment. It's just, how are you looking at those things? You come back home, you're falling asleep, and you're thinking about the day, what has happened. So my focus is on improvement all the time. But
so how do you start? How do you start with a child who's, because I know that you work with kids who can have quite complex profiles, emotionally. There's all sorts going on. Where do you start? If this is so, Anna would sometimes do some one-to-one therapy with kids as well.
Where do I start? Well, I need to see the report and just check. But again, was it done long time ago or just recently?
Does it represent the child
Absolutely.
you're with?
Yeah. Yes, because again, those coping mechanisms, they have built that, and maybe it has been working in one way, but what are the areas, the weaknesses? But I focus on strengths at the same time. And again, trying to adjust. So that's going to work with that particular child. every workshop is different, and I have
and
full
I've seen-
bags
yeah.
of
She has
different
full bags
things.
of resources,
Absolutely.
yeah.
And
Her
okay,
husband
brain
carries
friendly.
boxes in
Yeah.
for her.
Something for each brain, I'd
Yeah.
say. And quite
And do
change
you know what? That's a
activities.
great way to look at it.
Yeah,
Something for each brain, because we're so
yeah.
individually different.
Yeah.
Do you know, for example, Anna, right? Just move off track a sec, because I think this might be important for some of the parents out there. Some parents might be finding out for the first time that their child might be dyslexic or dyspraxic or whatever, and sometimes it can upset them, you know, and sometimes that can upset the child when they see the parent being upset then as well. Like, from your own experience, how would you be how do you help kids that are, we spoke about it earlier, some kids need to go into groups, but what if a child is really, really introverted and they're struggling emotionally with being told that they've ADHD or they're dyslexic or dyspraxia, and it's a family thing instead of just a child thing. It's a family. It's the overall, the mother and father, and they're struggling with it as well. How do you approach something like that?
Again, depending on the age, but I would have a conversation, like chunking and step by step, just to feel at what is the main obstacle there, what is trapped in there, because sometimes, well, it's masking, right? Can be anger, it can be anxiety, can be depression, but what is it? What did they hear that made them feel that way, that now they are thinking that they're like less or it's all about self-esteem, and some that they are different, that they are worse. Who said that, and how we can change that? So conversation, but they need to feel that connection. I think quite approachable, and this is the way.
Would you start with the mother and father? Like, would you
I
start
would.
with them and try to give them an explanation of how their child may be feeling because of their actions around not understanding what's going on for the child?
In the first session, I would definitely start talking and observing, listening, taking, notes. What is stopping them? Why they are thinking like that? And definitely then there are conversations. Always work with parents.
Some parents are academically driven and they want their kids to be the
Indeed.
same. So
Indeed.
like it's affecting the child.
Yes.
And we all see it with leaving cert kids. Like their
Do they-
parents pushing
yes.
them and fucking it's ridiculous. And it's just I just don't believe in pushing a child in education too far where it's affecting their well-being. So that's really my question, is like, what would we say to parents who just maybe can't accept that their child is dyslexic? Like, how do we work with them? Is there a way that we can talk to them, Georgie?
It's education, isn't it? It's the power of knowledge. If they can understand what it is, and actually they will then realize there's a whole bunch of positive strengths going on here.
Indeed.
There's some great things about having a dyslexic brain, to a point where LinkedIn looks for they have dyslexic thinking. There are massive companies who go out looking for people who have dyslexia because they know they think out of the box, creative problem solvers, visual people, people like you, Timmy, who can visualize what a house should look like, and I'm freaking out going, I've got no idea what that brick will do. And I think, it's all about the education. And I think it's difficult, I suppose, if you're an academic and you have a child who isn't naturally acquiring, maths and literacy in the way that you would have done. It's really hard for you to relate to that child. And so it's your responsibility to actually go and learn about it, I'm afraid. But that could be YouTube clips, it can be talking to someone.
So and that can affect the child then, because they're not standing up to what their parents want them to be.
I would say expectations. That's it.
Yeah.
Because they may feel that pressure, but who's saying that you should be doing this? You have to, okay? Focusing on those superpowers, and we know, strengths. You should be proud of yourself, your skills, okay? You have this, and that. And then talking to parents that, look, he or she is great at that, this and that. How can you develop that even more? Because we see children right, in the workshop, but outside of that.
And it's so interesting you say
environment.
superpowers, because I remember reading, a particular group of kids had written down how they felt about having dyslexia, and one of them had written, oh, apparently this is my superpower. Well, I feel like a flopped superwoman. And, this isn't a superpower. This is rubbish kind of thing. I can't remember her exact language, but superpower didn't work for her. She's like, that's total, but some people it does work. So it's actually finding the right language to talk to not only the child, but to the parents too.
It's sometimes it might be about finding somebody that they look up to in some sport who might be dyslexic, and maybe have maybe a video online or something like that, where say a child is big into GAA or soccer or dance or whatever, and finding maybe somebody that they look up to in that sport, and there might be a video of them speaking about their own
Actually,
learning.
I really, there's a huge benefit to that.
Yeah.
That is something that I would actually, advise all parents to do.
Yeah. There's so many out there.
There's so many.
So many.
And
Yeah.
they're all becoming vocal about it today,
Yeah.
because they're after being through it, and now they also understand the importance of them sharing their experience with children who are suffering, because they understand now themselves that because of their own suffering, how difficult it is for children who are suffering with dyslexia. And like, from my own experience, it fucking nearly destroyed me, and it pushed me down a path. No, not just that, but other stuff. I've just come kind of just, I don't know, isolation and what's the right word?
Well, I think you would feel isolated.
Yeah, revolting. Is that the right word?
I think,
Just kind of against everything structurally, like all kind of authority in school, because it's just I didn't feel like I was being understood.
Yeah. Every sort of, everywhere you went, you felt misunderstood and unaccepted.
Yes, unaccepted, because I didn't learn like everybody else. And again, that is no dig at anybody else.
But yet
It was just the way times were back then. We didn't really know what learning differences were.
No.
We hadn't an absolute clue. And
in
back
your
then,
classroom, there would have been 5 other children
At least,
who had learning difference, who
At
were
least,
also struggling. But
I actually think on a personal level, those numbers are a lot higher than what
definitely.
that they are out there. And that's just because when I look back at my own classrooms back in the day, there was out of 30, there could have been adding up to 12 to 15 kids struggling. But a lot of them kept in the quiet space. They didn't raise their heads. They were going home doing the homework, and whoever else was helping them, and the mother or fathers, and it was never noticed. The only times it started to get noticed was when there was tests and stuff like that.
tests.
Yes.
And we tests cause so much stress.
They do,
Not just for children,
For the parents as well.
for
Yeah.
everybody.
Parents,
Like even for me in college, doing tests, the stress and anxiety that I used to get. Do you know that form of stress, Anna, that a child is feeling? How can you explain how to help a child that is feeling, like, for any parent that's listening here and their child is coming home stressed out of their absolute mind about a 5th class test or a 6th class or even a 1st year test, and they're coming home, how would a parent approach it? My approach is like, do what you can, but I'm not going to leave him go out and play soccer all day the night before a test. He's going to do a bit of studying, and I'm going to say, listen, do what you can. You have to learn as well. But what is the right approach?
Indeed. I would say, what is driving that fear? Because there's a lot of anxiety behind it, and stress. That stress is caused by what? That something bad will happen? Do you know that it will? Or do you have that support around you? Now, have you prepared yourself? Of course, preparation is key, right? But what else is there? So do you trust your skills? Do you have the resources? Have you used them? Do you believe what you can achieve in yourself, or what's going to happen? Because that reminds me, again, my therapeutic approach here is like all or nothing, black or white thinking. It's like, it's not the end of the world, right? So, okay, that's one of the exams. You may even not feel good to write this. It will not reflect your whole knowledge on the day. But what next? I mean, yes, it is important, but we have the summative assessment and formative, and you're learning, improving all the time. So they need to know that, well, there are techniques as well, how
Can
to
you just
de-stress.
explain the difference between summative and formative, just for
Of
listeners?
Of course, yes. So every single week, or whenever we see our students, they're our learners. So we watch them, we listen to them, and every single day, those steps. So I sometimes use a scale. Okay, so without points, without grades, without marks. This is about purely progress, and they can do that with you, or you can teach them how to do it. So today we're working on this, and that. You're from 1 to 10, maybe at 3 or 4. So you see that next week 5, 6, okay? On the
it's over
scale,
a
you're
long
moving.
period of
It's a
time.
process, chunking, okay, step by step. And they are happy because I always use that self-awareness as well, a little bit of questions like, what have you learned today? What techniques have you used? Do you feel good about yourself?
Yeah.
And that's one thing, because one test, one exam will not reflect everything, your whole knowledge. And how about communication, life skills, and what you've learned outside of that?
It's something, it's a fair point, but sometimes the child mightn't be able to understand all that stuff too. How would your approach be, Elva, to maybe a child that's...
I suppose, just being my own terms now, but we all do it. It's that catastrophizing.
Yeah.
This is the be all.
Everything.
That's cognitive distortion too.
Yeah.
It's just, okay, well, let's look at it. I know it might not always help, but I find when they look at it logically, okay, I don't do so well in this, well, then I know to try it harder for the next time. Or if you're trying to push them a bit more, let's look at how you did the last time. Let's look at how much time we spent preparing for that, how much effort was put in. Can we increase the effort? Is that reasonable, given everything that's going on in the child's life? If it is, let's increase the effort. Let's see, does the results improve? Let's just be open and transparent about it. I think speaking to children or even teenagers honestly is really important, that they know themselves how they're getting on. So just, I suppose, having that conversation about...
But that's all preparation as well.
Yes,
what you're doing is you're constantly preparing them for the next step.
Yeah.
On Friday, I had a pupil who came in and he was raging, like crying, raging. And his father had said, look, if it's too much, he can come back, with me. And I just, well, let's see what can be done. And, it took about 15 minutes for him to calm down and for me to try and figure out what in the world had happened. And he had made so much progress, yet his teacher had given him a test and hadn't prepared him. It's out of the blue. All right, I'm giving you all a spelling test. And he was devastated. He got every single spelling wrong because he hadn't had time to learn them. He wasn't prepared, and his emotional regulation went through the roof, as you can imagine. So it's, as a teacher, we are always preparing them for the next step.
Yes. Transparency.
Yeah.
This is what's going to be happening. This is what we're preparing for.
Yeah.
And get that communication with parents as well, so we're on the same boat.
Yeah.
Like, that is not fair. What happened there?
I know it's not fair. I totally agree. It was, and look at the outcome.
No.
So the teachers need to become aware of that as well. That's something that
100%,
teachers should be taught about when they're having children inside in the classroom that may have struggles around literacy.
And things like writing up on the whiteboard 5 minutes before the end of a lesson what their homework is, particularly at second level. It's just totally unfair. So often I hear of them, well, I didn't write it down properly, or I missed out 3 words, so I didn't know what homework I had, and that's just, it isn't fair to do
so
that.
Avoidable.
Yeah, totally. It's so easy.
Yeah.
Have your worksheets prepared. You know what your homework's going to be. Give them a worksheet. Put it on Google Teams or whatever it is. Make their lives easier.
Yeah.
And listen, we still also have to understand as well at the end of the day, like these are kids. They're not adults we're talking to or teaching. They're kids. They're kids who just are really trying to figure out the world. Like, and they have so many other things going on in their lives at the moment. Which, like, there's so much with social media. There might be bullying. There might be pressure around sports. There might be pressure at home.
Social media.
We don't absolutely have a clue what's going on, because I know when I was young, I had so much shit going on inside my head. School was the last thing in my mind. Our tests. Literally, there was so much going on internally here and upstairs here that none of this other stuff really, really mattered.
Yeah, of course.
Until the teacher came home to the school and told my mother I was have to be missing 4 days out of 5 in the week. That's how it was. That was just the reality. And I would face those consequences faster than I would going into school, because it was a difficult time for me, Anna?
Absolutely. And then can I add, sometimes from empathy to compassion, going that way works really well. Just saying, I know it was tough for you.
Yeah.
I know that was terrible.
And that's
just like
great.
that, rather than denying that, you should have done this or etc. Just we focus, assessment and rubrics, and no. It was tough, that connection.
So what you just said is fantastic, right? And the reason being why is this: because of my own experiences in school, I have a lot of compassion for my 2 children. Okay, and I will not push my children in a direction that's difficult for them, because I don't want them to be stressed and anxious. I want them to enjoy school. I want them to do their best, but I also don't want to push them in a way that they're being upset by tenfold. Like, they're getting in school to be at a certain level. I'm not going to do the same at home. And I've emphasized that with my 2 kids. And they both know that the most important thing for me with them is their well-being. Absolutely. Because I know a lot of and whatever people want to take this, they can, okay? I know you don't need a load of degrees to be successful in life, okay? I know that. Okay, you can go on and you can get a trade, or you can go on and focus on one thing in life and become an entrepreneur and be really successful in that one thing, because you give it all your time and you become so dedicated that you're absolutely brilliant at it. And I know how life works like that. And I know my kids will be fine, because I know their personalities, I know the way they are. And I think parents need to understand that we can cause way more damage to our children in the long run than the short term of pushing them with the education. Yeah. Yes, we all want our kids to do well and succeed and be better than us in life. But listen, they have their dreams, we have our dreams. Give them a bit of space and give them a breather. Because we've seen it a lot in the last few years. Some kids have really hit some bad places in their lives because of being pushed with education, and not just by parents, by themselves.
And what often happens, as we know from experience, is the anxiety leads to dysregulation. And when we are trying to regulate ourselves, if we haven't got someone helping us with an appropriate regulation strategy to help us, we turn to the drink, we turn to the drugs, we turn to something that's going to soothe us and make us feel like, you said it earlier, you said when I was high, everything was great in life, and when I wasn't, it was all crap. And that's what we really need to try and avoid, is these kids going out and finding that self-soothing in an inappropriate way that is not going to help them in life. And that's, it's just another big thing we have to do in schools as educators.
You know how you can soothe a child as well, through what we were just saying, leaving them know it's okay.
Yeah. I mean,
that's
some
another
really
way
crave,
to soothe a child, but tell them it's okay.
Yeah.
You just
goes back to the words of kindness.
Exactly. And compassion.
Indeed. Numbing. There are different forms. Masking. And then there is some pain, but you need to find the root cause, what it is. Because throughout the years, maybe that was, again, that mechanism there. Maybe avoidance, maybe just denying. I don't want to talk about it. Don't touch that. It's like wounds or something, right? Again, from compassion. And I think one point there as well about those expectations, and from that, building resilience. Can they do that?
Yes, yeah, definitely.
How to
Resilience
move
is a big one,
forward?
yeah.
Do you have an action plan?
Isn't the resilience built through the actual difficulties?
Yes.
Exactly.
You know, and like resilience is great if you can get them through it and they come out the other end. You know, but
You know, yeah, I
do you know what I mean?
I do know what you mean, and I think you're a very resilient person because of what you've been through.
Yes.
And I think that, in my view, that resilience is extraordinary because you went to such an extreme that your only way out was resilience.
Yeah.
And I think so not everyone has that extreme, yet they don't have resilience. And it's how you learnt yours. You basically learnt through life experience, and you found a way because it was all or nothing. It was down or up.
Yeah.
But it's working with, I feel like, the middle ground ones where it's not so extreme, but they don't have the tools to build their strengths, to build their resilience. And we've got to help them with that.
And where do you start?
I think small successes, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
Achievable goals.
By just becoming open with everything.
That's it. Like, not, you know,
Like-
I suppose there's still going to be children at the end of the day. We're focusing on their confidence, but I'd be transparent if I was taking someone from learning sport. Our goal is to learn these phonic sounds. This is how far you've gotten. This is how far I want you to get. And I think parents do that as well a lot of the time. And I think they do appreciate it.
You know what we're talking about, and we've
Yeah.
been speaking about this for the whole night about
Yeah.
how opening up within a group who feel the same as we do, like children talking
It's a
about
lot of
dyslexia,
power.
they
Yeah.
strengthen that. Maybe having groups at junior level and second and leaving level that they can go into a classroom and they can talk about the struggles they're having around the leaving cert, and they can relate. So they don't think that they're on their own and they're
great
being
idea.
isolated. Like that for me would work tremendously as well. And those that are struggling can help each other because they're relating to each other. And because we both know, like, teenagers, they don't really talk about much.
Yeah.
They keep a lot of the stuff that's going on from bottled up because you have to have this, you have to be a certain way and act a certain way, and last thing you want is to leave people know that you're struggling.
Yes. Yeah.
But like, if we did, like, especially at leaving cert level, the amount of pressure that are put on kids, and that's all they are.
That would be great. I've seen
It's-
it done at primary
have
where they have
workshops.
had children present about their own learning differences for neurodiversity awareness. And I know it helped them with their confidence, but like, I suppose they explained to the other children the different routes that you can take, like we were talking about celebrities being spokespeople as well. Like, it does open that conversation, and I think it gives them a sense of relief nearly.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just having it in this school setting where after school, 4:30, we're having a leaving cert meeting for kids that no teachers, you know, maybe a counsellor facilitating it, where they're going in and they're talking about their struggles around the leaving cert, how they're getting on at home, maybe where they're feeling pressure. And I think the relatability of something like that will help a lot of kids, a lot of young people to be able to cope a little bit better and create little groups, little networking groups where they can learn the subjects together. You know, where one's strength is here, the other one's weakness is here, they can help each other because they'll be able to teach each other at their own level.
Yeah. It's a lovely idea, isn't it?
It is. It
Lovely.
is.
Yeah.
It's the same how AA works, NA works, how all these different fellowships work. They work because people can relate.
And they have a set of rules, don't they?
There are traditions
Yeah.
and steps, and it's all really strong positive stuff to help people grow. You know, but when you're looking at something like someone struggles within education, it's different again. You know, but where the importance of something like this is just getting them to open up, just to get to talk about it so they're not at home staying up till 4 in the morning,
Thinking
studying
they're
for
the only
something
one.
that's not even going in.
Yeah.
Well, this is kind of what I'm hoping to achieve as well with dyslexia camps,
Yeah.
which I'm going to do. You know, I'm doing in the Easter and the summer, and it's just getting them together and being able to talk about this stuff. But as you said, actually, what's really important is that happens within the education systems that they're in, the schools that they're in, so that it's seen as normal. We're normalizing it. We're having chats about it. I think it's a genius idea, Timmy.
Yeah, well, I'm sure somebody must have thought of it before.
Well,
because
it's not widely in place, so there's
but
definitely
like
scope
I think
for that,
it's really it's like this. Right? A guy got on to me recently, Corkman, and this story is amazing. And if he's listening, hi Declan. Declan was listening to a podcast recently, and we had a lady by the name of Joanna, an American lady, on board, and she spoke about a college in America, in Texas, that is specifically for people who are in recovery from alcohol and drugs or whatever. Okay, specifically, where you can recover in the college, but also doing a PhD or a master's at the same time.
Wow.
Amazing stuff. Joanna Ivers was that lady's name. So he actually moved to Texas
Oh my gosh.
from Ireland.
Yeah.
Wow.
Right?
I
That's
love
a big
that.
job. And he's living.
Good on you, Declan.
He's living over there at the moment, right? And his thesis in his PhD is around why recovery is not implemented. Recovery fellowships are not implemented within colleges. UCC might have 20 or 32,000 students up there. I know MTU has 15, okay, just in the campus side. The amount of alcohol and drug use, right, within these colleges. No, I'm not saying that it's riddled or anything. I'm just saying that it's there because sometimes when students go to college, it's like they're left out of the cage, the family environment,
Sure
and they
is.
have a bit of freedom for the first time in their lives. And sometimes the drinking can be a little bit too much, and a lot of them they struggle. But when I was in MTU, or UCC, I never came across a recovery meeting in any of these colleges. I don't know what the story is at the moment, but when I was there, I never seen an AA or an NA meeting or a GA or whatever, CA. There's none. And he done the thesis and this, and he's trying to. They've started them in England. They're there in America, but we need to start bringing things like that. It's the same stuff. What I'm trying. My point is we need to start bringing stuff like this in.
And
things were.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with you, and I wonder whether it's because society thinks it's for older people. You know, when they've lived a life and then they've got to. Do you know what I mean?
I was
I know.
15 when I did
know.
my first treatment centre.
And that's what people need to hear. It's that actually it's not just for older people.
I met
this
a
is
lady
happening.
in the UK who went to treatment at the age of 12 in my recent visit over there to prison. You know, like addiction hits at any age. Like we were using fucking chemicals at the age of 10, 11, 12 before we even started drinking.
Yeah.
Do you know, it's when you have a child that's dysregulated and they need something to detach emotionally, to soothe. It doesn't matter what it is, whether it's a bottle of gas or a bag of heroin or a bag of cocaine or a drink. They will use whatever it is.
Unless you can get in there
And they can
find a way to avoid that. But yes,
I think we're having one a bit deep there. My apologies, ladies. They're probably looking.
I know, it makes perfect sense.
Yeah,
it does.
Absolutely.
yeah. But listen, come here. It's been an amazing conversation, Georgie. We went off track there a few times.
Why not? That's what it's all about, isn't it? It is. It's a
Yeah.
conversation,
Yeah.
and it's about life. And this is what happens in life.
And it's very important that we get what you're doing in your jobs out there, and just explain it as well to other teachers that might be listening to this. You know, and maybe they might want to contact either of you and say, what can I do here? Maybe to improve.
There's so much training
know?
out there, but I suppose, the teachers want to learn, but I suppose that's sharing that knowledge,
It's about it's about
Yeah.
sharing the knowledge and
Yeah.
also sharing experiences.
That's it, yeah.
You know,
Just a very quick question: do teachers still have to pay for their own courses?
So the way it works is schools will send teachers for some courses, they'll cover some, and then others you'd have to cover yourself. So it depends on what you specifically want to train up in. I know if I say if a child is to come into my class with we'll say dyspraxia, and I don't feel well equipped, I would probably go and pay to do a course for that.
See, I think this struck me when I first came over here as, wow, that's a way to put someone else off from training.
Yeah.
Is if you have to pay for it yourself, because in the UK it's very much paid through the schools. They're given a budget that makes it affordable. And again, that's where I keep going back to the leadership. You know, if they see it as a priority, they'd all be going off and getting trained, or you train someone to train the others. And I do think that's something that needs to be looked at, is the expense of training and becoming knowledgeable. Like, how do we educate people if we can't share that knowledge?
Yeah.
So that's just one thing I wanted to put out there. And I know that if you're, for example, if you're a tutor in a workshop with the Dyslexia Association of Ireland, you can have free training. But you have to be a tutor to do that. And you got to have the confidence to go for a tutor role.
Yeah.
But we need tutors. So
we need
tutors,
tutors,
guys.
Yeah.
You know, so please, do come forward. But
before we wrap it up, is there anything that either of you want to mention before we?
I would say let's focus on creating more opportunities for everybody, for our learners and for other teachers. So I'd like to invite other educators out there, because like the project, The Power of Positivity, is currently going on in 10 different countries.
Isn't that amazing?
So many students willing to share, show, and you are not alone. This is the message. Be yourself, be unique, share your story. And that's one thing. Also, I create resources, take part in some conferences, webinars. I'm all over the world, to be honest. I'm chair of neurolinguistics special interest group, if this is for someone out there listening. So do get in touch.
How do they get a hold of you, Anna?
I think LinkedIn is the best place to find me.
Anna what on LinkedIn?
Machura, Machura, ANNA. Yeah.
UCC.
I'm at UCC. You can find me there as well.
And about you, Elba?
I think just from a teacher's perspective, just to be open to learning and keep learning, and for teachers to keep talking and having that conversation with each other and with parents, and that the workshops are great. If anyone is looking to join, I find it a great learning curve as well. They're a great experience.
You do the workshops and learning as well.
Yeah, I've only started this year now, but I have learned so much.
Came in and saved the day.
Yeah, thanks. No, you learn a lot just by putting yourself out there and trying these things, and just keep learning. Yeah.
Well done, ladies. Thank you very much. Thank you, Georgie.
Thank you,
and for another great podcast. And we'll leave it at that, Tony. Yeah. So listen, thanks a million, everybody. And listen, another great episode of the Long Way Back podcast. I'm Timmy Long, your co-host Georgie tonight, Alma and Anna. Thank you very much. God bless.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.